Brewer Nation, what is up with you guys? Thank you so much for coming back. I've got the one and only Brad Hightower. He's got I would say the best podcast, even better than the one you're listening to here, which
I
is
don't know
my
about that.
own. His is high quality. I put up a lot of shots. And so I think we get the same amount of value at the end of the day to our viewers, or listeners and viewers. We go on YouTube also. But Brad Hightower, I mean, if you've been on LinkedIn, if you've been following like social media spaces, he's doesn't really need an introduction, but I'll give one. If I make any mistakes, Brad, just jump in. But
Go
he
for it.
owns sites in the greater Oklahoma City area. He's looking to expand as well. He's not just limited to there, but he started out Oklahoma City. He's even expanded into oncology. So he's trying to do all kinds of therapeutic indications, was doing surgery trials, trying to do some derm. Him and I are going to collaborate and, share studies, do biz dev with one another. His model is cool. He works inside the doctor's practice. So it's an interesting model because it limits overhead to some extent. And I'm actually living that model right now with one site and soon to be another one with my dermatologist. But you stay in that model, right? You don't ever intend to like get your own place. Or is that am I wrong there?
Yeah, actually, you are wrong. We do have a standalone site.
Okay.
We moved into there. This maybe March of this year. So yeah, we do have a standalone site. Our preference is to stay integrated, just because I feel like there's so many benefits of being right there with your physician. But we also work with physicians who are part of systems that we don't have access to and we can't get in.
I
I
see.
also think it does help potentially allow for some collaboration where, maybe a physician over here doesn't want to go to another physician's clinic, but there's sort of a neutral ground in a way. So it can help potentially bring physicians together who maybe wouldn't otherwise. So
I
yeah, we
like
do have a
that.
standalone space, not my, intended business model, but I think it does provide sort of another alternative for physicians who I can't get in their practice.
That's a good idea, actually. So we don't have our own space yet. This is a brand new company. July is when I moved out here. We just had our first SIVs. So January 22, we should start screening patients. And when I say we, I literally mean me and my nurse practitioner business partner and the PI. That's it. But here's I'm going to pick your brain a lot. I hate that word, pick your brain, but I'm going to ask you, oh, you like that word? I hate that word, man. People
Yeah.
ask, can I pick your brain? I'm like, no, you can't pick my brain. We can have conversation. Uh,
Right.
the issue I'm having, my PI is cool as hell. I guarantee if you met him, he'd be in the top 10% of like cool PIs you've ever come across. That's in my book.
Sure.
Uh, the problem is his office, it's big and his reputation's the best in this community. Like most people are owned by the hospital. He's one of the few independents, but some of the other independents, they got bad reputation. He's got a very good reputation, and he's got like 8 other providers, NPs or other MDs working in his office, and every provider has their own MA. So everything's like streamlined, organized. They were the first people in Yuma to use electronic medical records, like in the late 90s. They're on top of it. The problem I'm running into, as generous as they have been, they're not charging us rent or anything. We're running out of space because they give me one room and then I have like an attic too. And we can use like his office, like his actual office to store drug if we need to. But I don't see us doing more than like 3 studies there because we only have 2 studies. They started shipping all these boxes. The entire room that I've been allocated is full of boxes. I gotta go tomorrow, empty everything out, throw the cardboard out, stack all the kits and the EKGs and all that stuff that they send you. Right? We're running out of space. And when he gets a new provider, I got lucky because the new provider that was supposed to work and take over my space, something happened where they can't do it. So it bought me a few more months, but I have to be prepared to like move up to the attic at any given time. And as cool as the PI is, the reason he told me is like, I make more money from the providers than you. And
Well,
I
yeah.
said, you know what? My response was for now. And then he left and he said, okay. But basically he's saying, show me, don't tell me.
So
So
yeah,
I'm
I mean
sure
that's
you dealt with this.
we have when we are now, and I think that's I mean what the end there is really the key. I mean, I think once you show them how profitable it can be for them, a lot of times the story starts to change a little bit because man, I tell you, we operated for a long time out of like a 10 by 10 office within one of the providers we were with. And frankly, it's even the hospital space we're in, we're outgrowing like it's try not to walk a CRA through there if I can keep from it and walk him straight back to the conference room. But it's still stacked up with stuff. But again, if you show them the money, a lot of times things start to change a little bit. Things they start to
So
allow you to eat
how?
into that
Because
space.
so I did. So here's the thing. The budget we got for these two studies, really good budgets. I emailed him the budget. I'm an open book. I said my books are open, just the same model you have.
Yeah.
He looked at the budget. He's like, all right, looks like a good number, but I don't understand it all. So like whatever. He's basically back to square one. Like, just show me the check.
Well, and unfortunately, that's it. I think, and I've seen it time again that you'll get a little bit of attention from the PI and their clinic. Great. Well, if you start cutting them, nice big checks, I start widening up a little bit, and you get a little more cooperation. You get a little more space.
Have you noticed that personally?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had a study that was difficult to get surgery scheduled. Well, get a few surgeries in and cut a 6-figure check, and then pretty soon you can get surgery. You can have surgery tomorrow if you guys need surgery space. So
Wow.
for better or worse, I think that that can certainly change the tides a little bit. Otherwise, as well as I do, this is a long game, like building that relationship up, building that trust. It's not all financial, but certainly doesn't hurt to come out hot with a nice check to your physician if you can do it. But aside from that, that's where having some additional space does come in handy. And it's nothing extravagant. We have 2 exam rooms and, it's coordinator space, just enough to where we can get done what we need to get done. I'd say it's no more than a couple thousand square feet, relatively small. But again, provides that additional storage opportunity. And until then, in some of our other places, it's just been a matter of trying not to look too ghetto, keeping everything organized as much as possible. But that's the sad reality sometimes.
So you started this what year now? It feels like it's not that long ago, but it really is.
Well, it's 2018.
Ah,
so
okay.
It was the February 2018 is when I quit my job to do this full time.
Wow, Brad, that's not that long ago, but you've been able to grow a pretty successful company in that time period.
I think the model is like sells itself, and I'm sure you've seen it too. If you can really make it risk-free for physicians, a lot of them want to participate in clinical trials. It's not that they don't want to for A, maybe the altruism of it, or B, it's a nice revenue stream.
Yep.
Or C, it puts their name out front and center of being the cutting edge of new technology, or whatever the case may be. It just has to be presented, I think, in a digestible way. And again, you probably, like I would want to make it as easy as possible for these guys. And if you can do that, it pretty much will start to starts to sell itself after a while. I really do feel that way.
I think so too. I think to get to the point where, because my PI's never done a site selection visit. So he was doing it, but he's the kind of guy to be like, the CRA came in there and like started going through the slides, and he looked at me and asked me like loud in front of them, hey, I already looked at these slides, what I need to sit here for? And I was like, well, this is how they do in research, and by the way, they're gonna come again for the SIV, so like just be prepared. So he's getting used to it. You got to kind of coach him a little bit, but these doctors, they're not used to research because it's totally different from what they do day to day.
Yeah, it's true. I do think it's always wise to try to prep our new PIs as much as possible. And because yeah, you don't want them saying, well, I don't know, how do we do informed consent? Well, all right, settle down. Let's talk this through and make sure, on the same page. But I also think it's look, this is like the conundrum, right? Like I think we need more physicians, we need more patients that are in different areas, which means they have to lean into the idea of using research naive physicians. And again, I think that's where great opportunity exists for people like you and me, to where we can go, slide into these clinics and these communities and create that infrastructure for them. So yeah, it's challenging to make sure that they're prepped for what research really entails, but ultimately I still think it's going to happen any other way.
How did you did you start out with surgery? Was that your first
So it was a cardiology clinic, and they have a ambulatory surgery center on site. So one of the partners is actually a vascular surgeon. So they had surgery, a lot of interventional cardiology, and then sort of general cardiology as well. And actually the big study that kind of got us, a lot of growth was a surgical study.
Those are cash cows.
Well, especially if you can work with, true like category A devices, things that can't be billed, that are true IDEs.
Yeah.
They are, because we also work with some of the biggest, cardiology device companies in the world, and frankly, their budgets aren't very good because they really nickel and dime you on the, category B approved devices and things like that. So it's yes and no. I mean, it can be a cash cow, or it can also be a lot of effort for very little pay as well.
I see, depending on the kind of device. And then from those indications, cardiology and vascular surgery, I'm assuming you had one cardiovascular surgeon as your PI?
Yes.
And from there, how did you get PI number 2? Was it a contact of PI number 1? Because that's how I got my PI number 2.
So no, actually the next way was me cold calling MSLs in my area. And I still preach this to people. And you guys know every company works differently, but in a lot of these bigger companies, MSLs really kind of are the gatekeeper for recommending sites.
And that's medical science liaison, for those that don't know.
Yeah, and for a lack of any better definition, they seem like a sciencey salesperson. They're not sales, but they show up, they tell you about all the science and their drugs, and maybe able to tell you about the pipeline. It's a lot of PharmDs
where science meets cold hard cash.
Yeah, no, I'd say they're
actually cool. They're usually pharmacists, they're doctors, usually pharmacists from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So you called your MSL, like random MSLs.
Yep. And I said, I was actually looking for some gastroenterology because I knew there was a lot going on.
Hot.
She happened to know a great doctor in Oklahoma City, does not have research infrastructure, just made the introduction. And again, this led to the bigger agreement that I've made with the hospital group and medical system, because he was part of a medical group. Of course, it took 9 months to actually get a contract in place with this medical group, but as soon as we did, the MSL awarded us 3 protocols, and it was pretty much off to the races from there. But that got us inside the medical group.
He had his own outpatient practice, right?
So he has a clinic, but it's within the medical group. So in order for me to work with him, he went to administration and said, I want this. And again, that was a huge turning point for me, because that obviously opened me up to every therapeutic area and hundreds of doctors. So that was a big.
Do you have an financial agreement with the medical group, or do you pay the PIs individually?
No, so I pay the medical group, and the medical group pays the physician for their research time.
And how did you get this physician who you just met to sell his own group that he works for? Because that's potentially a risk for them. Like, hey, if I bring this and they don't like it, it like backfires in my face. How did you do that?
So I don't know that it was so much me. I think that I happened to The model resonated with the physician. He's very academic, comes from an academic background. He's a big thought leader in the space that he works. So I honestly think a lot of it just had to do with he liked the model. He'd been wanting to do research. It's a basically financially risk free. We show up and are there free of charge. We just split that study income as it comes in. So I think it had more to do with his sort of standing within the medical group that they were willing to listen to him.
Okay. Wow, that's tough, man. See, I don't know if I would have done that right away. It just sounds like so much work. 9 months when I could just be maximizing, studies from my other PI I have.
Well, and
you were
that's an
doing
interesting. And that's interesting. And I think about this a lot. Is I mean, what you're doing is you're in a perfect position because you can either grow or not. You can just stay in your clinic and do extremely well, and you don't need to have 15 people on staff, right? You could probably live a very nice life, enrolling a few trials a year, enroll them very well, and the sort of opposite side of that is I tried to expand very quickly. So it's something I think about. I think you don't have to be huge to do well. You can be very small and do ostensibly better than somebody who's big.
Absolutely. I have probably every day, I think it's fair to say now, every day somebody's reaching out to me wanting to start a site. And I don't know if I told you this before, but like we end up usually having conversation, like phone calls with Chris. Chris does most of the talking because he's got it down now. But I can tell in that first minute if this person's going to succeed or not. And I don't know if I'm right every time. I'm a human also, but there's something there. Something about this business requires you to not need a roadmap, right? And I think the people that tend to fail are people who ask you like for the roadmap, and then you give them the roadmap that you used, and then they ask you like for sub roadmaps. And I'm like, right. This is not gonna, just because it worked for me does not mean this is gonna work in your situation. Like there's a lot of variations here, and seems like you didn't need a map. You just kind of picked up. And
so I'll say it's something I've been thinking about a long time, and honestly watching your YouTube videos and listening to your podcast is I was like, you know what, man, I'm just gonna go do the damn thing. I've heard like validation in what I had thought and what you were saying. So it certainly, and I'm not just kissing your ass, but like it certainly motivated me to go give it a shot.
Well, that's good, man. Did we ever have a conversation?
Before? No, at the time, at the time we had never talked. I just watched some of your videos.
Because I wonder if we had that conversation, I would have been like, yeah, Brad's gonna do this. I'm sure I would have. That's more of a person like, don't even call. And that's working right, against my business model. Sorry,
but I think that's the blessing and the curse of this, right? Is there's not really a roadmap, so you can create your own, which is the benefit. And the downside is that it's hard, dude. It's hard. I can't tell you how to do it because it happens a million different ways, and it only happened. Look, I bet I emailed 100 MSLs to get that one to tell me, yeah, let's talk. And probably, I probably talked to 10 who were like, yeah, you don't have a doctor? Great. Never mind. Go away.
What can you give me? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I had one conversation with MSL. So my PI, the guy I'm telling you, is really cool. He doesn't like being on video that much, but he's on one of my videos. It's not that great of an interview. I'll try to do more with him as we get more comfortable with each other. But he wanted this obesity study from a big pharma company, and I'm like, all right, well, who's the sales rep? I could get the MSL through there. So his assistant gave me the sales rep's card. I called the sales rep, said, hey, who's the MSL? We're trying to get studies. Boom. We had like a 40-minute Zoom with me, the MSL, and the doctor. And yeah, the MSL started pointing out like all these different things we could be doing with that company. But he did say, hey, it's not gonna happen overnight. It's like 6 to 9 months. We'll get you in the system. So it's just planting those seeds, right? But you did it not just for studies, you did it to get other providers on board.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's the that's the thing is it's good and bad is you can succeed at a site level and creating sites and site networks, but frankly, you kind of have to have your fingers in as many cookie jars as possible, I think, because
Yeah.
you don't know what's going to hit and what's not. And again, it's we've had physicians we've worked with, everything looked great, and you realize they're terrible PI, and you don't want to work with them again, or studies look great and it ends up they're terrible, you can't enroll them. You've always got to be, I think, as diversified as you can be, just with the opportunities available to you. So
S- Some
it's
of these
again,
studies, man, they just they're asking for like the impossible, basically.
this is why I get annoyed by how much talk there is about DCT and
Decentralized trials, guys.
yes, and
Decentralized clinical trials.
I get like nauseous every time I freaking read it. But just
I know you do.
make the protocols more what patients look like in real life. It's not that hard, you know?
But okay, let's say they did do that. Then they wouldn't need that many research naive sites. I think it's also a blessing for if you want to keep making new sites, like new PIs. I think it's actually helps your business model and to some extent my business model too.
Oh well, that may well be. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Go ahead and timestamp
Sometimes
that.
be
We'll
careful what you
mark
ask
that.
for, be careful what you wish for. But I get what you're saying. Once you're in, yeah, let's get the studies easier.
Right,
Let's get
right.
because some of them are just not. I don't want to give away study info, but there's one study that I worked on recently, not at this site, at my other site. They want it's a phase 2. They want patients that are healthy, but then they have horrible symptoms of their medical condition. So it's like the doctor's like, these two things don't go together.
Right.
Usually it's not like the body systems are in a silo, everything's connected. So you're not going to get these patients. Like there's going to be very few. You're going to have to screen like 100, pre-screen 100 to get like 5 on paper that are good. None of them you've even talked to yet.
Right, right. Well, I mean, hey man, I figure that's what they have to do to make sure their drug works and they can get approved, because I can't understand why else you would make it so difficult for people to participate and then be like, why aren't you enrolling patients? Well, that's not what your normal patient looks like.
Cherry picking, but that's one of the reasons why we're able to get these studies to begin with. So yeah, I guess when was it you started this with no funding, right? It just bootstrap everything.
Yeah, no, it's all bootstrapped. I still haven't taken any investors on or anything like that.
Good.
And I
They
prefer it
suck. They
again.
suck.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't want. I started this in part because I felt like I had a vision of what was wrong with how research is being done, at least where I'm at.
Yeah.
Uh, and so you don't want somebody else sort of sticking their fingers in it. Usually, people who don't know, they just have money.
The minute you take that investor money, man, it has to be the right deal because you start losing your company. I've been in that situation. I don't think I'll do it again on their terms. I'll do it on my terms. Bottom line is don't be desperate for money if you're
Yeah, well,
if you're a
yeah, I
site.
would unless it's enough money that I don't ever have to work ever again, then probably not. Probably not going to take it.
Exactly. So you're sometimes you get a PI. Like my PI number 2, I'm meeting him today. He's the SubEyes on this study. I'm gonna try to do like a 5-minute video with him. He's actually open to videos. He's not camera shy or anything. He's a dermatologist. He's a professor at UC Irvine, and he works here in California. So he's big time. I've been telling him since I got here, I'm gonna try to find you a study. And luckily I got these studies from my other PI where we're using him as a SubEyes and we're paying him pretty well. So he doesn't think I'm just full of crap, you know. But I haven't been able to get him a study yet because he's in a specialty that, in derm, we were talking before we started recording, they don't come around that often. So how do you keep these PIs in your system and not thinking you're a charlatan?
Yeah, that's always tough because again, as you know, like everything takes way too long. It's always hurry up and wait, right? So, they want their feasibility back in one day, but you're not going to hear anything more from the sponsor for 2 months. So, that's a constant challenge. And honestly, it becomes chicken or the egg. Sometimes I almost have to wait till I have a potential study opportunity before I go try to hit up a PI, or I'm just very clear up front and say, listen, you may not hear much from me for 6 months, but I'm going to be out there
Wow.
looking for studies. I may even reach out to you for referrals. Maybe we can start a referral relationship just to keep the visibility and to keep the relationship sort of, active, I guess, so to speak. But I try to be pretty upfront that, it may be a while, and then I would go bust my ass to try to find them studies as fast as I can. What you're doing is perfect thing to do. I mean, make them a SubEye, and at least they see that, you're coming from a place of good faith. You're trying. You're not just saying, yeah, some fly by night dude that's like, hey, check it out, clinical trials, and they never hear from you again.
Yeah, I think I got
And
lucky
that's
with
happened.
this guy too. It does happen. It happens all the time. I'll tell you a story after, but this PI number 2 that I have, he's believe it or not, Brad, he did his entire training, 3-hour training. He did it. He downloaded the certificates. The lady couldn't open his attachments. He resent them. This is like
Wow.
amazing PI.
Yeah,
Like,
that is that's already
so
commitment right there.
I want to keep him. So like I try to meet with him. Like my strategy is like to go meet like face to face at least once every 2 weeks or something. And like it's easier when you actually have something to meet about. So today he's signing a delegation log, but yeah, it's tough, man, because after a while they're like, well, I guess get me a study, but in the meantime, I'm seeing thousands of patients. So
Well, so let me ask you this. Have you had luck? This is something I struggle with in terms of sort of, to really strengthen the idea of building a network. Like, how can you leverage the relationships, right? So creating a referral system, maybe even for doctors who aren't SubEyes on the trial you're working on. How can you incentivize in a way that doesn't, skirt any ethical rules and potentially engage them that way?
so
You know what I'm saying?
referrals from them to your studies.
Yeah. So, like, say for example, that dermatologist wasn't a SubEye, but said,
Oh,
"Hey,
okay.
we'd like to start working together. I'm going to find some studies for you. In the
Hmm.
meantime, how can would you like to refer some patients to our trial that
Yeah.
is active, and we can, how do you how
The
do you
way
make that
I've
worth
done
their
it,
time?"
the way I've done it is by default, I try to get them as sub-eyes unless they tell me no.
Sure.
Um, Usually when you explain what that means, they say yes. So what that allows me to do now is bypass that referral fee thing
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just pay them very well for their assessments. I mean, paying them super well. Like I had to negotiate my guy down because I gave him too high of a number. He gave me too high of a number. I said yes. And then I got the budget. I was like, actually, it's not gonna
Like,
be that.
right.
He was cool. He negotiated down too because it's still a lot. So that's the way I've been getting around it.
Fair.
Um, I have an ophthalmologist who, bless his heart, man, the guy's 92 years old, won't stop working, right? So he said, "Give me studies if you can, but I don't know how much longer I'm gonna be around."
Right.
Is what he told me. But I'm paying him for the assessment, so he's a sub-I as well, and he gave me his CV and to get studies. So from my experiences, they're okay with being sub-Is if you explain what that means.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to envision a world where I'm working with, 10 practices.
Yeah.
I don't want to add 10 SubEyes because Jesus, that's a lot
Yeah.
of crap to
Yeah.
keep up with. So, and I'm with you, and that's generally the strategy I would take is make them a SubEye, and then you really don't. There's no worries. But
Yeah.
again, how to sort of scale that without making it harder on yourself? And I don't know the answer. I mean,
I
it's
think
an
this
honest question.
I think there's no way to avoid that, at least from my experiences, because then you have that whole referral fee thing, and I guess you can still do that, but they don't really feel good about it. Neither do you. It's just cleaner to make them a
Yeah.
sub-I, and hopefully you have a coordinator or a regulatory. A major unlock I have a remote because of eSource and eReg. I have a CRC Academy intern. Monica sent me her. She's in San Francisco. She manages my regulatory files. I have to actually go get the signatures, but then I scan everything, send it to her. She files it. When a monitor needs access, boom, talk to Chloe. Don't
Yeah.
talk to me. I'm busy. Talk to Chloe.
Right.
That's been helpful. So even if you had 10 SubEyes, and now all we have to do is replace me running to each one to get a signature. But in the beginning, I actually want to be the one running out because they don't really know you yet, right?
Well, yeah. Well, and again, that's a I don't know, bottleneck of the system a little bit, but it's also kind of necessary, right? Like you have to build that relationship out, and you
Yeah.
don't you don't necessarily want your coordinator, depending, you may be cool with your coordinator doing it, but
Yeah.
really, I don't think I'm much different than you in that we sort of are our business in a big way. Whether that's good or bad, is arguable, but I do think it's super smart as much as you can centralize, so you don't have to be doing that. That's a good idea, and not something we've look, man. This is maybe another conversation, but like I'm love the concept of going full eSource and full eReg, but I can't convince myself to do it for a couple of reasons. One's that it is still extra work, especially if a sponsor is providing source for you. Do I want to rebuild it? Do I want to spend all the time to rebuild it when the sponsor's not going to pay me to rebuild it, or even contribute to any of the other costs that are associated with that? And then B, you got to have a PI who's willing to jump in and sign right now, because that stuff's timestamped. There's no room to play.
Yep.
All that is going to you're going to be very very held to that, and that's scary sometimes. So it's you're right. It provides some efficiencies and some ways to work smarter, but it also has its downsides, I think.
It has
and it's
downsides.
risks.
It has downsides, and that's somebody who uses Creo. We have a very complicated study. It requires blinded and unblinded investigators on both sides. So, and the sponsor provided the source. So the unblinded stuff we're converting to eSource. The blinded stuff is just the same assessments over and over. That's for the SubEyes. I know they're not going to log in on their phones and do that.
Right.
It's easier to do it on paper. For the right study, it makes sense though, especially if you're like limited on space. Like I could barely fit lab kits and drug. I can't fit binders, and we still have the physical ISFs, right? But as far as patient source, those things get pretty big also. And
True.
so that's what we found is like the eSource is helpful. Now we haven't seen any patients yet to actually have source, but I gave myself no option when I moved here. I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna do paper here. I'm gonna switch to eSource, and it's much easier to start. If you're gonna do it, just start with it from the beginning.
Yeah, it's fair point.
But again, I see benefits from the regulatory already.
And that makes sense. And again, maybe it's just a band-aid I need to pull off at some point. But again, it's that hesitation. You've got, again, some doctors would be perfectly fine, no problem. They know, they check their email, they're whatever the case may be. I need them to sign something. It's not going to be a problem. But others, not so much. And again, I hate to have half a system on paper and half a system not on paper. It's a challenging decision to dive into, I think.
I agree. It has to have the right study and the right investigators, but I think it's going to open up other positions, like something like a PI, what do they call it? The word's not coming to me. Concierge, PI concierge. Your job is to like go to every PI that hasn't logged in and go tell them what they're doing. Like, go do it. If you have to grab their phone and do it, go do it with them.
Right.
Someone like that. I think it's going to open up other roles. Like, I think technology always does that.
That's smart. I think something I've looked at, I'm not at that point, but having someone go do sort of like basically having a drug rep for your trial company, right? So yeah, they go schmooze up the doctor. Maybe they go meet new doctors, get more PI referrals, help you start building your network out. But that would be a job that I think would fit right in. Is if you're going to go meet up with them, then here you're going to log into. I use real time now, but Creo as well.
Okay, real time. Judy uses real time for one of my Latinos in Clinical research partners, co-founders. She likes it, but I just had a good relationship with the guys at Creo, so stick to them. Loyal. There's a lot we could talk about, Brad. I feel like we can do these over and over and over again, but I know you got to go, but there's it's like, for site owners, this is one of the models to do it. We're looking to get our own space because we're running out of space in our doctor's office. And there's different ways. Like, just because Brad does it or I do it doesn't mean that's what you're gonna do.
No, I would say again, do it however works for you. I mean, there doesn't have to be a hard and fast roadmap for it. And frankly, I think those are the people that succeed, the people that can problem solve.
Thank you. I hate when people say, "Hey, I want to start a site. I have no PI. Can you give me your business plan?" And I tell them, like, if you're a client, we'll give you our business plan, but what good is it gonna do you if you don't have a PI and your PI doesn't like the business plan? Like, why are we wasting time? Go find PIs. Don't worry about business plan.
Yep. And again, make it work. Maybe it's a percentage, maybe it's a line item. Don't try to figure it out until you figure it out. You can't. You got to go figure out what works before you can start putting it on paper.
I had one potential client. They keep texting me because we had a call a few weeks ago. They don't have a PI. They keep texting me like little micro questions, like, "Well, how much do you pay patients?" And I'm like, every protocol is different. "Oh, well, we need a ballpark." Well, no, you don't. You don't even have a PI. Why do you need to worry about paying?
You don't have any patients to pay, man. Who are you paying?
So
I think unfortunately that's like a sort of byproduct of the industry too, though, right? Like, I feel like a lot of coordinators or people at the site level are so like, you follow a protocol, you have source documents, you have CRF. It's all very regimented. So it's easy to sort of get into that mindset. And we spend all our time getting beat up by CRAs if we don't color within the lines. So, to sort of have to shift that thinking, I think is just a different, maybe a different skill set or just a different way of looking at it.
I think so. I think it takes a different person than just because you're a CRA doesn't entitle you to be a good site owner or a successful site owner.
No, and you may be the worst site owner, the worst, honestly.
I tend to lean towards that if I had a gun to my head. Because they're taught to think inside a box. And when you started this, you didn't think inside any box, Brad. You were all drawing all outside the line.
Dude, I did a site selection visit with a chair and a refrigerator in one of my new doctor's clinics, and we got the study.
Wow, that's big time, man. That's legendary.
We figured it out.
I did a SSV once. I was already experienced, but we moved to San Bernardino. We didn't have our lease signed yet. We were about to. So our lease that our office we were going to use, the suite, was not even available. And it was around the holidays. So the CRA came out for SSV. I told the landlord, "Hey, man, I need to get this study or I can't sign this lease." And he's like, "All right, well, just use our conference room." So I used their conference room and I told the CRA, "Hey, they're renovating our office. We picked the holidays because it's slow." We got the study. The study.
There you go.
Like, there's no like CRF or regulation or SOP about that's going to help you with something like that.
True. Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. You just got to go do the damn thing, man.
Red, we got to do more, man. I know you got to bounce. Well, people can find you on LinkedIn. I'll put the link underneath the video and in the show notes. Anything else? Note to File podcast. You have to go listen. It's a must. It's a must.
Well, it's about time to have you back on. So,
man, that's good. I'm in a podcasting mood now. I know we're about to get busy in the beginning of next year. So, yeah,
start banking some episodes.
Let's bank those episodes. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Go to Note to File podcast right now on any podcast platform and on LinkedIn. Go follow Brad and talk to him. He's accessible and he replies back to everybody.
I do. Thanks, Dan.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.